everybody, I'm Dan Cooper. Welcome to the Sharpen Podcast, brought to you by Acumen, an exclusive community of CEOs and business owners to help you grow your top line, optimize your bottom line, and enrich your storyline. On this episode, we're going to talk about collaboration, competition, kingdom, and calling. Today, my guest is Bob Shank, a lifetime resident of SoCal, which I'm sure he'll talk about. He spent 14 years as an entrepreneur in the construction industry, transitioned into working in ministry, pastoring, and then leading or leaning into leaders through mentorship. I know him as the co-founder of the Barnabas Group, of which we have a chapter here in Kansas City. Bob, welcome to the show.
Dan, it's my privilege to be with you.
Right on. So that intro has quite some twists and turns in there. It's not the typical like entrepreneur intro. So give us a quick tour. How'd you get to here?
Well, I married into a family business, came out of high school, didn't have the money or the family history that pointed toward college. My now wife and I were planning on marrying a year or so later. Her dad owned a company with 200 employees. He had 4 daughters, no sons, no succession plan. My last name is Shank, but he saw my last name as Solution. And he brought me into the business about the same time that he brought me into his family. We worked together for 6 years. He handed me the keys, allowed me to run it with full discretion. And for the next 5 years, we grew by about 400%. Became dominant in our niche in the 14 Western states, attracted the attention of an international oil company as a potential buyer. It created an opportunity for my father-in-law to leave with his financial payoff for his decades of entrepreneurial commitment, and it allowed me to leave with some great experience. Though no payday, but I had freedom now that I didn't have as long as the business was in the family. I had no options in terms of my future. I had been developing a ministry footprint in the marketplace while running the business out the front door, doing kingdom work out the back door. Found that my fulfillment was coming from the back door, not the front door. And so began the process of creating a model where the dominant amount of my time could go into things that are clicking on the metric of eternity, while keeping a foot in the marketplace as a advisor, as a consultant, as a private equity investor. And it's been an unusual run. I've been had an opportunity to run a nonprofit for 40 years that I founded in '84. Somewhere along the line, got called into active duty in a mega church that had lost its founding pastor to moral disqualification, and took that over and ran it for 4 years. Navigated a merge for that church with another healthy church. Left that, started the master's program, which became a significant signature event in my lifetime, that then birthed a great entity called the Barnabas Group, which has presence in multiple communities around the country. So, I'm technically I'm semi-retired, and all that means is I don't have an organization that I have to run any longer, but have the delight of being involved in and alongside leaders who are in their season of significant leadership. And I get to be a Yoda to their Obi-Wan, and keeping an opportunity to be involved in things that really matter.
Right on. It's not often people drop the Yoda Obi-Wan reference, so I appreciate you.
That's in the Lost Minor Prophets.
So it's a lot of people do the success to significance thing. They have a hard time figuring out, okay, when is my success over and when does my significance begin? And do I do one for the other? So what was the pivotal moment or conviction that propelled you from this marketplace entrepreneur into this spiritual side? You talk about the front door and back door What was going on heart and head wise that uh, had you lean?
Well, life messages seldom are developed in a short burst of time. They develop over decades of life. Mine did. Along the way, I found myself in relationship with a dear friend by the name of Bob Buford. Bob's now in heaven, but Bob was about 14 years my senior. He, as I, became next generation in a family business, uh, found his business life to be very successful, but his uh, parallel lane in terms of the kingdom even more impacting, and managed the two in parallel for a long time. He and I had that in common, and our friendship grew into a partnership. There was a lot of mentoring that went on between him and me, but what we really found, what I found, and what Bob found was that um, doing for profit work and even doing it in a manner that honors God is fulfilling, but ultimately leaves something unaddressed. That there just is a sense that doing business Christianly is certainly a valuable contribution, but that for many, if not most of us, there is a parallel lane that is seldom utilized, where our potential to make impact in the kingdom with no apparent current calculated benefit is a demonstration of faith that says, if I got this wrong and if eternity isn't real, I'm wasting time and energy. But if God's promises of a end of life evaluation, that on top of the foundation of my faith in Christ allows value to have been created, calculated, and ultimately compensated by God, who doesn't operate in debt to anyone, that is uh, a bell that I wanted to ring on the other side of this lifetime. And the further I've gone, the more committed I am to believing that God has offered the ultimate um, uh, invitation to be shareholders in his eternal kingdom. And without that knowledge and without understanding the nature of the offer that he makes crystal clear across the pages of the scriptures, without knowing that, arriving into the eternal glory with the free ticket of salvation, but nothing more, is still better than the alternative. But to get that far and to not realize that work done by faith in anticipation of an eternal compensation that God has offered is the greatest deal that, as a businessman, I ever imagined.
Okay, so some people give that a word like calling, or some people give it a word like mission. Um,
Dan,
what do
you're
you,
you're naming the headlines that are pretty critical to get this contextualized. In my world, we like to say the career is what you're paid for, but calling is what you're made for. And some
okay,
people are
so
able to do both in concert in a aligned manner. But for most of us, there are two lanes that run in parallel.
right, so most people, if they're running a company or they're leading something, they know what the first lane is.
Yeah.
How do you find lane two?
Well, because that's not a read three verses and call me in the morning
Uh-huh.
question, it really requires some attention that I found. And I came to faith when I was five in church. I've never been um, disenfranchised with regard to the local church experience. I've always believed that that is a vital part of every one of our lives. But the real issue of calling never emerges in the church curriculum. Um, when I was going after that, I found that it took some critical mentoring relationships with folks that understood what that was about, who could speak into my life and help me get clarity about that, was critical for me to get not only clarity, but confidence about who it is that God made me to be relative his kingdom. And it was so impacting for me to make that discovery. And then to just say from there, I wasn't going to sign up for anything that didn't allow me to be fairly clear that the activities that I was going to be investing a significant amount of my time and energy to were things that were going to have eternal value. So calling went from an elusive concept to an operative criterion for me. And it's embedded in what we developed in the master's program. And the master's program is the answer to the question you posed. How do you find your calling? We found that 12 days spent in a cohort over the course of 36 months, 1 day per quarter for 3 years, was going to be an opportunity, not unlike an executive MBA program, but as many have called it, an executive MBA in kingdom leadership.
Mm.
Um, it's about half of that time spent in achieving life mastery. And then the last 6 of those 12 sessions spent on life mission. And that calling is that issue. But the first half of it just recognizes that there's some work to do to get our lives to the place where we're demonstrating that what God intended always for our lives to represent in terms of the uh, full battery of personal, family, professional, and kingdom identity, operating at high levels of effectiveness in concert in reality. I find that most Christian uh, leaders that I know often reach the middle of life having some part of that combination, their personal realm of body, mind, soul, and spirit, their family with marriage and parenting blended together, their professional lives with their financial existence and their professional career activities ultimately have to be in alignment with biblical standards before God will reveal the unique calling that he has ready for disclosure to us when we're really ready finally to embrace it and be qualified to pursue it.
All right, so we've been up here in the headspace. Let's get actually out into the world. Do you have a story that exemplifies like that? Uh, Whether it's somebody who went through the program or a personal story of your own?
Well, I've got 3,000 graduates who could each tell you their story, and
Uh-huh.
no two of them are the same. And among those graduates are hundreds of folks who have been in career ministry for most of their working lives, pastors and nonprofit parachurch leaders, often who were hired into ministry without clarity about their own calling. And the tragedy of that is coming into a place where you've been hired to do something about which you are competent, but within which calling still seems to be elusive. And so for us, Dan, it's about clarity about 3 things. And I could give you story after story about it. It's about first getting clear about God's kingdom purpose. His purpose biblically, when Jesus was asked what are the key laws of the Old Testament, there were hundreds to choose from, but he said it was to love God and love people. I think if the same question was posed of him now that the New Testament canon is closed, the most important message from the New Testament canon is to make disciples. So the purpose of God is to love people, to love him, love people, and make disciples. And too often, we're operative on the first and the second of those, but not on the third. In my business life, we were loving God and loving people, but we couldn't make the gospel and creating disciples a central focus of what we were doing in the contracting world. So we were doing kingdom expression, but not necessarily kingdom expansion.
Mm.
Our career lives should be a place where kingdom expression is consistently maintained. As Paul would say, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. Well, that hasn't changed from the time he wrote to the Colossian church to now. Whether we're eating or drinking or whatever we do with the rest of our time, and what we do with the rest of our time is operating in community, typically in career, 100,000 hours a year spent in our career lives. And from that, we can do pretty well in terms of loving God and loving people. But that notion of making disciples really involves engagement in the Great Commission. And it's very difficult sometimes in finding a way in our career lives to actively, directly benefit the Great Commission unless we find that our ability to create resource capacity in funding for the Great Commission is a natural flow through from our professional activities. About 10% of my time I give to managing a portfolio of private equity investments, but that 10% of my time provides a massive amount of stewardship opportunity that allows me to give multiples of my income every year to the kingdom. It's no longer a gee, what percentage of my income should I give? We're giving multiples of our income on an annual basis because the career that I maintain as an investor allows me to take benefit out of that and place it into partnership with ministries that are making dramatic strides in bringing disciples who are followers of Jesus into the family of God.
So let's go there. Traditional metrics. You've mentioned metrics a couple of times,
Yep.
both sides of the coin. Revenue, ROI, growth, don't always reflect kingdom outcomes. How should leaders evaluate eternal ROI of their efforts, either personally or corporately? So you've talked about stewarding resources. That might be one kind. How do you look at that?
Well, I first got to make sure that my business activities are not creating a negative a negative contribution to my kingdom account. It is possible to be involved in business activities that either have us partnered with people that we should not be partnered with, or providing goods and services that are not constructive in terms of serving people with a quality of life that would honor God. The question that sometimes is hard to ask is Jesus was a carpenter in Nazareth. If he was around today, what kind of work would he be willing to be involved in? And if I couldn't see Jesus working in the next office, maybe I shouldn't be in the office next to him. That there are businesses today that are suspect. One of the guys that went through the program with us in our early years inherited the ownership and leadership of a major, 500 screen movie theater chain that his father had founded. And through examining what the convergence of God's kingdom purpose, his God honoring passion, and his God designed potential, those things together, which create a model in which I find calling at the convergence. But he did that and just came to the conclusion that their business required that they be displaying things that were not glorifying to God. And that more and more the flow from Hollywood was putting him in a position of virtually endorsing things on the screen that he had no affinity for at all. And it brought him to a place where his decision was to sell that business that he had inherited from his father, because he could affect benefit for the kingdom with the resources unleashed from that he could not unleash as long as the business required that he be doing something that did not directly or indirectly bring glory to God.
Right. So for back to the first principle, love God, love others. So the business has got to follow principle number one. How else might you think about it?
Well, there are certainly ways in which our ability to positively affect the people that we serve and the people that we are employing in that service, for them to recognize and realize that claims of faith from the senior level are legitimate and are desirable and are offered openly without some restrictive kind of a mindset that says, we're going to create a hostile environment where if you're not a Christian, you can't be welcomed, but rather an environment where a natural and wholesome part of the ongoing environment is one that embraces faith. My friends in the Green family have done a wonderful job with their Hobby Lobby and their bookstore chain along with that of demonstrating how um, people with a legitimate personal claim to faith can create an environment where faith is not hostile, but it is not foreboding and demanding. That it's offered freely and in a winsome manner. That you can make decisions about your retail purchasing anytime you want to. But if you go into a Hobby Lobby store, you're going to find that God has not been written out of the aisles where references to him can show up. And if they find their way home from those aisles to be in your family room, it's a wholesome fulfillment of a, a meaningful message that they believe is part of their story.
Good. So you got to walk the talk uh,
Absolutely.
without making it awkward. Because most of the time, if when you lead a conversation with, you want to talk about Jesus, the answer is usually no. So we need to be contagious and palatable, but while we honor God in
And
doing
very often too, Dan, and I've seen enough of your podcast product to know that you do this very well. It's about knowing when and how to ask the right questions, rather than coming with a predetermined 4 point sermon outline and carpet bombing people before they open their mouth. That
right.
it's far more the question of where do you find yourself today in terms of your relationship with Jesus? And if you find someone who articulates a personal faith in Christ, there's nothing in the world wrong with asking the question, can you tell me a little bit about your family? Can you tell me a little bit about your career? And then can you tell me a little bit about your calling?
Yeah.
And those three queries, and allowing people the opportunity to um, unleash some personal experience and status with regard to those things, will begin to either demonstrate some strength points or some pain points or some areas where there's a longing but an ignorance of how to advance from where they are to where they would prefer to be.
So let's do a rubber meet the road thing. As the co-founder of the Barnabas Group, you mobilize marketplace professionals to serve ministries. Can you share a story? And there's a Barnabas Group in Kansas City. Acumen's HQ is in Kansas City. If you don't know George Commons, you should. He's just we'll put a link in the show notes. Can you share a story where a business leader's expertise unexpectedly catalyzed impact in a ministry or a community?
Sure. Our very first presenter in the Barnabas flagship store in Orange County, California, was a man with a PhD from MIT, or no, he was from Rensselaer Polytechnic in New York. And his career history was in as an inventor in the medical device arena. And he had been on a trip to Morocco some years before, had seen a woman who could not walk. She was disabled, crawling across a dirt field trying to get to a little village to get some supplies. And Don saw that and was struck by it, and did some research and found that in much of the third world, it required about a year's income to buy a conventional wheelchair. And struck with that awareness, Don went home to his garage and started prototyping the idea for a affordable off-road wheelchair that could be assembled and provided in the developing world at an affordable level that would meet a need that was not being met, because he found that there were predictably about 50 million people around the world who uh, were incapacitated and had no mobility at all. He brought his prototype from his garage to the Barnabas Group and said, I'm an inventor. I've got patents. I know what I'm doing in terms of medical devices. Here's the need I saw. Here's the proposed solution that I've created. I have no idea how to take something like this to market.
Mm.
And um, in that setting, there were people in the room who knew how to create infrastructure, who knew how to uh, solve supply chain issues on an international level, how to handle international shipping from point of origin to point of distribution. All of the expertise that he needed and didn't even know how to design for mobbed him from that presentation. And the initial impetus to launch the free wheelchair mission emerged. And he's become kind of the poster kid ministry for the poster kid Barnabas Group, because now here we are 25 years later, and Free Wheelchair Mission has given away about 1.5 million wheelchairs in the developing world. And they are multiple generations of product design later, continue to refine it, continue to improve it, but they have continued to benefit from the pro bono provision of expertise that he didn't even know fully how to articulate in terms of framing an organizational structure to enable the vision that he had to become reality. And so we've seen that repeated literally hundreds of times over as ministries that always begin with a wonderful vision, but lack clarity in terms of strategy and the expertise to frame the infrastructure that will make a wonderful idea a future reality.
That's such a wonderful story because it really culminates all of the best parts of Barnabas with a huge vision. Um, so for those of you who don't know, there's three ministries that present in a Shark Tank style format, and then you break off, and if one of them touch your heart, you go listen, and you might know the right person. You might have land or a building or expertise in your job today that you can give beyond just writing a check, right? We all get asked so many asks. And so this is the expertise and the purpose portion of it. So I'll go from your big vision to like down on the street. One of the lines I love is do for one what you wish you could do for all. And so one of the ministries that presented was called Minding the Gap. And they're like, we just need more people to read to kids. And I was like, ooh, I have I have control of my own schedule. I can read to a kid every week and make this happen. So I started reading to a kid. And of course, you know, once you start doing that, you get so much more than you give, and all those good things happen. You start developing relationships with people at school. So from sending patented technology overseas to reading someone a book in your local town, the Barnabas Group can help you find um, a place to start or a place to fulfill one of those things: purpose, passion, and your potential.
Yeah. On one of the course tracks that's not existent in the seminary world is in organizational leadership. And the sad thing is that ministry lives and dies reflecting the same kind of reality that the for-profit world does. 80% of small businesses fail in the first 5 years, not
Wow.
because they didn't have a good idea, but because they didn't know how to get out of the working in the business model for the founder to the place where they're working on the business and creating a business that's sustainable without the founder opening the door and turning the business open sign over and being the only face to do what they were originally set in motion to do. Ministries suffer from the same thing, and the breakthroughs that businesses need are the same things that the ministries usually need, but they don't know where to go for solutions. And folks that have figured that out in their for profit lives are able to bring that expertise and experience to bear in a way that reduces the mortality rate of the small and early stage ministries that may never come to life to the level that they could have.
That's I'm going to steal that line, mortality rate. That's a nice way to say where things go to die. I always think of nonprofits as they're not nonprofit, they're not for loss.
Right.
Um, because we all need cash, whether you're going to put it in your pocket or if you're going to hand it out. The rules are the same. Okay, we've kind of traversed back and forth. Where are you? And are you ready for more? Maybe it's time to look further into your purpose and your passion and your potential. You got to walk the talk. If you're not walking the talk, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. And so do you know what your purpose, your passion, and your potential is? So let's say I'm sitting here, I just listened to all this, and I'm like, you know what? You tugged on something, and I'm curious, where would I start? What's my first step?
A website. Everything's found on a website.
Where would you go, Bob?
Come visit us at PriorityLiving.org or mastersprogram.org. Either one will take you to the same homepage and begin to introduce some of the touch points that we've offered to folks that are confident that God's got bigger things in their future than they've seen in their past. And your best day is always future if you're still breathing. And there's a good chance that God's got more up his sleeve than you've been looking for yet.
And then I'll add one more. Barnabas Group KC .org, I think, is that. And if it's not, it's .com. So that would be the other one. Um, Bob, I appreciate the time and of course the stories. It's always good to get a boatload of wisdom from someone who has been there and done that.
Well, I'm delighted that you invited me into this conversation, and I'm looking forward to my next opportunity to airdrop into Kansas City and come alongside the Barnabas and ministry leadership community that's going on there now.
It's good stuff. You've started something very fun and it's got legs, and we're enjoying it. If you are interested in becoming a member of Acumen, go to acumenimpact.com and click on the apply button. Or if you'd like to learn more, we have a ton of great content under the resources tab, just like you've heard here today.